No worries. Om Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasanna Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnur Gurur Devo Maheshwarah Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vagardhaviva Sampraktau Vagardha Pratipattaye जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ. Awesome. So we will start from Shloka 13 today. Just wanted to briefly mention what we studied in the last week. Sorry, just going to mute all. Okay. So few critically important points for us to remember is then there are different teachings, right? And no teaching is wrong. So it's just how each guru has interpreted the Vedas and what makes most sense to you. So just with that caveat, Shankaracharya very, very specifically, emphatically says there is only one Atma, not many Atmas. And we were just looking at that right in the previous page. If you had a chance to go through it, sorry. So I'll just go previous one. Atmas are not many. So here he specifically says in the shloka, because there is a plural that got used, he says deha bedha anurvritya bahuvachanam. It is only because of the bodies that associate being with a body. That's why we are using a plural. Otherwise, na atma bedha abhiprayena. It's not because there are not many atmas. It's only one atma. So that's a very important point to note. And we talked about the intrinsic nature and the incidental nature. Okay. So the other part that is also mentioned is this is the most critical part of Brahma Vidya, right? So, and as in the gurus say, if it was as straightforward as to tell you something like you are a human being and the Paramatma is sitting somewhere else, and you are a Jivatma, then there is Paramatma. These are all things that we already know. It does not require Vedas to tell us that, because this is what we see the world as in its Maya form. What Vedas have to tell us is something that is not comprehensible to us by just looking or seeing with our five sense organs. We are not able to perceive it. That's something that it is trying to teach us. So in our terminology, more contemporary terminology, we can say with eyes we will see the Vibgyor colors, but it's trying to show us what's ultraviolet and what's infrared. Otherwise, if it's showing the same colors, we really don't need something like Vedas to teach us that. The other part, there are 3 steps in understanding Brahma Vidya. And Shaji Mahoday actually told us about these in the introduction to Vedanta classes, which were conducted just before we started Gita. So Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So what they say in the Shravana phase, note down all your doubts. Don't forget to make note of them. And as you progress into the knowledge and as you contemplate on it, as you think more about it in the Manana phase, all of those doubts and questions you had should be able to they should be self-resolved. You will find the answers without having to worry too much about them. So just to know, if you have any questions that come to your mind, note them down. And each of these verses also have some very intrinsic words. So if you find a word that you haven't learned or heard before, try to make note of those, and just and thanks to Bhaskarji actually posts meanings of those beautiful words that come and that appear in Gita. And you will also notice that many of the Gita verses directly come from Vedas and Upanishads. There are so many verses that that are directly, literally, just the exact same sloka appears in Kathopanishad too. So just note down those. Just keep a notebook so you can go back to those and contemplate on those. With that, we'll get started with Shloka 13. Who would like to read this one?
What is the third one? Shravana, Manana, and what is that you said? I think
Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana.
what do you do in that phase?
It is more about continuing to contemplate and living in that truth that you just learned from the Shravana and the Manana. Once and continuing on that path.
Okay.
Nidhyasana or Nividhyasana?
Nididhyasana. And we will see a beautiful sloka that actually explains the term. Bhagavan says, Atmanyeva Atmana Tushtaha. Somebody who lives and revels in Atma and continuously just does, like, in Nididhyasana, we talk about Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana, like all of those, whatever we have learned, we are actually putting that into practice and living the life of a Jivan Mukta. Okay. Who would like to read
I can
Shloka
read.
13? Go ahead, Taraji.
Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dihantara praptihi dhirashta dhiras dhirashtatrana muhyati
Dhiras
dhira
tatra na muhyati.
dhirastatrana muhyati yatha, just as dehina, for the indweller of the body, asmin, dehe, in this body, kaumaram, childhood, yauvanam, youth, jara, old age, tatha, so also, deha antara praptihi, the gaining of another body, tatra, there, dhiraha, a wise person, muhyati, is not deluded. Just as how for an indweller of this body, the jiva, there is childhood, youth, and old age, so too is the gaining of another body. With reference to that, a wise person does not come to grief. Where does the person, the jiva, exist? The jiva, the one who makes the body conscious, is the indweller of this body. In other words, the jiva, referred to in this verse as the dehi, is nothing but Atma within a body, mind, and with a body, mind, and senses. In this verse, Krishna referred to the threefold states that the body undergoes, each of which is distinct from the other two. For instance, in boyhood, there is no need for shaving, whereas in youth and adulthood there is. Nor is a person likely to require a cane in either of these two states, unlike in old age. When childhood passes, does the one dwelling in the body survive or not? If there were no survivors, an old man could not talk about his earlier exploits and accomplishments. His voice is certainly no longer the voice of his boyhood, having become very shaky due to the changes brought about by age, but the I is the same. The I is solid, not shaky. Thus, the one who was in childhood is the one who was in youth and is the one who is now. That I does not change at all. As each state comes and goes, the I remains the same. Although each state is destroyed, the Atma is never destroyed. The body is said to undergo a metamorphosis every 7 years, but the person remains the same. The birth of a later state does not imply a new birth and new life for the person, the Atma, nor does death of the previous state spell death for the Atma. These states come and go, and Atma remains the same in a given body. The same Atma sees all three states, childhood, adulthood, and old age. One need only ask an elderly person what he or she had for lunch. In response to this simple question, an elderly man may start with his first marriage. The Atma is the same through all the experiences of life. Just as each of these states is taken for the Atma, another body can also be taken for the Atma, even though Atma itself remains the same. Just as how a person does not remember his or her first 3 years, in the same way, previous lifetimes in other bodies are also not remembered, which is just as well since there would only be that many more problems. If we all knew our own and each other's previous births, we would be blaming people for those lifetimes just as we do in this one. There would be then far too many situations and people to blame. Known or unknown, Atma is the same, be it with reference to the first 3 years of this birth or to previous births. Thus, from the standpoint of Atma, there is no reason for sorrow born of self decimation. It is the same even from the standpoint of the simple jiva, the one who has a body. Where is the reason then for getting into a state of delusion that I will be absent at any time? The jiva will continue with or without a body. Without a body, there is no problem. I am Atma and therefore timeless. As a jiva, gaining a new body gives you a new and better start. If you did not make proper use of the previous body, now you can make better use of the new one.
Awesome. Is there any confusion with this one? Because we are all born in the Sanatana Dharma, we tend to understand this, like, by the very nature of the multiple janmas is, very easy concept for us to understand. But if there are any questions, we'll just pause here. And I actually thought I'll pull up Swaminathan Mama's presentation instead of just creating something new. He's a professional Vedanti, so I thought I'll just use his. And here we were talking about the Shariratraya Prakriya he mentioned to us. So something like, something is, and it's born, grows, vardhati, all of that, it changes and decays and dies. But what is common in all of these is the Atma. Similarly, what's common to the next wave is also the Atma. So the waves, the ebbs and flows do happen, but what's intrinsic in all of those is the Atma. Okay, if this particular topic is clear, then we'll move to the next one. And at any given time, just stop me if you have any questions, but note down your questions as you're asking them, because you will find answers for those, whether you find it today or you understand it today or not. Very soon you will get all the answers. Okay, I did not realize it was a very short paragraph. Taraji, can you finish this one too?
Sure.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted you to explain then. I know we know about the Atma, the Jiva. How will we define the Jiva?
The Jiva is the Shariratrayam. Right?
Okay.
So,
Shariratrayam.
yeah, the one who is embodied in the Sharira is the Shariri, Dehi. So in this particular verse, we are talking about dehinosmin yada dehe. Dehinaha asmin yatha dehe. In this body, whoever is living in it is the Dehi, the Atma. The constituents of this body, mind, and sense organs is the matter and energy in which the Atman is living. And because he is living in the Atma, you can actually call him the Jivatma. And then you can call the cosmic of this, the macrocosm of the same consciousness as the Paramatman. But essentially, there is no difference apart from that this Paramatman is enlivening the body to be a living being. Did I make sense?
I will have to think a lot. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it has got me started thinking. Thank you.
No worries. Go ahead, Taraji.
The wise have no sorrow. Because a wise person has the knowledge of Atma and Anatma, there is no question of he or she being sorrowful. Such a person knows that what does not change cannot be changed, and what changes cannot be stopped. When the facts are clear, there is no sorrow. The wise person is one who knows what is real, Atma, and what is unreal, Anatma. Further, Krishna said, Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitosna sukha dukkadaha agamapayino nityastam stikshasva bharata. Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, matra sparshaha, the contacts of the sense organs with the sensory world, tu, indeed, shita, ushna, sukha, dukkha, which give rise to cold and heat, pleasure and pain, agama apayinaha, which are of the nature of coming and going, anityaha, not constant, bharata, O descendant of Bharata, than them, titikshasva, endure. O son of Kunti, the contacts of the sense organs with the sensory world, which give rise to cold and heat, pleasure and pain, which have the nature of coming and going, are not constant. Endure them, O descendant of Bharata. Given that the Atma never dies, that it always survives, as Krishna said, it seems that the sorrow caused by the death of a person is not reasonable and therefore not very legitimate. That there may be no sorrow for the person who knows the Atma to be eternal and the Anatma to be non eternal is also possible. However, in this life, sorrow does occur because of certain changes that take place. Situations do not go your way all the time. You do not call all the shots. Things keep changing, some of them favorably and many of them not so favorably. Some situations are pleasant, others unpleasant. That which is pleasant does not last, while the unpleasant seems to stick to me most of the time. There is therefore both pleasure, sukha, and pain, dukkha. The pleasant arrives and must pass away for the unpleasant to come. For instance, people begin to wail about winter long before it actually comes. As the summer ebbs away, they wail about that too. Even when summer is there, it is going. Thus, when winter is not there, it's coming, and when it is there, it seems not to be going at all. Half the summer is gone because of clouds, and another part of it is frittered away by rain. When it is hot, it's too hot. Because the seasons keep on changing, we find that sukha and dukkha keep on occurring. The pleasant has gone and the unpleasant has come, accompanied by sorrow. The sorrow is not due to Atma going and coming, but purely because of the situational context. That being the case, is there not a legitimate sorrow? Krishna talked here about the nature of the sense organs in the sensory world. The sense organs, matras, contact sense objects, and these contacts, sparsha, give you the experience of cold, heat, pleasure, pain, etc. Shita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha, Daha, the knowledge that something is cold or hot produces a response that this is pleasant, Sukha, or that this is unpleasant, Dukkha. Cold can be either pleasant or unpleasant, and so can anything hot. For instance, you do not go to the fireside on a hot day as you would when it is cold. Thus, heat is not always pleasant, and cold is not always unpleasant. We find that there is a uniformity in our responses and also to a certain extent a universality. The world is one of opposites, heat and cold, for example, and these opposites give us pleasure and pain, sukha and dukkha. Categorically, we may say that certain situations make us happy, like a pleasant sunny day. At the same time, however, there are people who want rain so much that they are praying for it. Therefore, the rain that you do not want, someone else may be praying for. These then are our responses, which seem to give rise to sukha and dukkha, all due to the contact of the sense organs with their objects. One may argue that if contacting heat and cold gives rise to sorrow, perhaps we should avoid contact with sense objects. But how can we? Krishna did not say we have to avoid the contacts. We need only understand them. Most of our problems are like this. They only need to be understood. What is to be understood here is that the tendency to come and go is the nature of opposites, heat and cold, pleasant and unpleasant, and so on. If you keep on saying it's hot, a time will come when the heat will be gone. It is the same with the cold. Therefore, they are not constant. They do not remain for you to complain about. Even if you want them to stay, they will not. They are always in a flux, constantly changing. and this nature of their being in constant flux does not change. We cannot totally remove ourselves from the opposites or remove them from us. This is not to say that one should not make an attempt to improve a situation. But if things must always be pleasant for you, Lord Krishna was making it very clear here that they would not be. But things are both pleasant and unpleasant. They're not always going to be as you want, nor are they always going to be unpleasant either.
We'll just take a quick pause here. The endure is a very unpleasant or like unfair translation of the beautiful, beautiful term titiksha. The way I would, the close translation that I feel is being indifferent. Things will keep going, and things will change, things will come, things will go. Being indifferent to them and not putting them into what my Guruji used to say is put them into this is good, this is bad, this is pleasant, this is unpleasant, this is nice and this is not nice. So don't categorize them and put them into buckets. And because once you start doing that, you are biased towards a certain result. You're biased towards a certain scenario and situation that you're not in control of getting that particular situation or scenario all the time. It may happen, it may not happen. So what we are feeding our mind by saying, I like this or I don't like this, then we are telling the brain, we are training it to see things very differently, and that being indifferent, and especially with scenarios that you cannot change, that are not in your control, that is very important. And that's the term titiksha. So please don't take it as endure, which is more, I think, passive, more like, struggle with it, kind of like, there's a negative connotation to endurance, right? So it's not that. Titiksha is a beautiful, pleasant feeling, actually.
Just accept things as they are.
Correct. And acceptance may also be a little passive, Taraji, that, from a different sense. So, for example, as when the temperatures are anywhere between, say 20 degrees to 30 degrees, we are indifferent about it, right? Like whether it is 20 degrees or 25 degrees, we really don't care much about it. So that same indifference, you would carry it when it is 15 degrees or 40 degrees. Knowing that you really cannot control it. What you can do is to ensure that, you're covered properly, and you're just, done your sunscreen, and, you carry your umbrella and things like that. So anything that you can control, do those, but don't complain that a situation or a scenario is not to your liking.
So basically, don't form an opinion about it.
Don't categorize is what Swami used to
Okay.
say. Don't put them into buckets. This is the red bucket and this is the blue bucket, and I like blue. Just wanted to briefly talk about that. And actually, I remembered a personal story when I was much younger, in my, probably 10, 12, and I was that age. I wanted the fan to be running in the full speed at all the time, including winters or summers. It didn't really matter. I just wanted it. And my brothers would complain that it's too cold and they needed to turn it off. And I would tell them, I'm a polar bear. I need some cool air. And when I moved to Canada, they would laugh at me so much that they would say, that's why you don't say weird things like that. Now you are really polar bears. It's like, you're negative 40 degrees. That's what you needed. Okay, so we'll move to the next one. Who would like to read this topic?
Read.
Sorry, 1 second. Bhaskarji has a grit. Yeah, I would agree with that, Bhaskarji. That's a good word.
The word I missed it.
Sorry, what was the word?
Grit. A translation for titiksha.
Grit, I would think was more
The persistence. So if you take it from a persistence,
Indifference seems to be the right.
Yeah, like I personally would have translated it in all my classes as indifference.
Mhm.
Yeah. Would you like to share your thoughts on that, Bhaskarji?
Guruji, I was very clear with the indifference. That was my question. See if grit is an option as well, but I really like how you put it together. We were me and Pranati were questioning whether grit
Mm-hmm.
can be used or not, and I really like your input.
Yeah, I think persistence with scenarios and not for achieving something, that is something else, right? Like, where that the samadhana, the sadhana, and all of those, like shraddha, those other parts might be more of a connection to it. To me, the closest I could ever get to is the indifference.
Yeah, that's what I felt. The grit
Yeah,
is something that you work with, you know, like
correct.
It is more like courage and
courage, yeah,
resolve.
yeah, to face and
Mm.
do, and that perseverance, So yes,
And to
Can
be
you
honest,
say,
even indifference also has a negative connotation, right? Like I'm indifferent about things. That could be a negative thing, but here we are indifferent because of the knowledge that we have gained, that there's nothing much you can do in a certain scenario. What's in your control is what you would do, and you don't really worry or be anxious to, like, what we call, like, too elated with something or too worried about something. A very positive word.
yeah, that state of thinking, Sri Devi ji, is giving so much strength to the personality.
Correct.
Mhm. Mhm.
can you use endurance?
Endure is what they have translated in the book, but endurance is also, I endure is like more passive to some degree.
Yeah.
So it's with a lot of positivity.
Uh-huh.
And actually, like the way I have built myself, once I started studying Bhagavad Gita. Prior to that, like, I I probably enjoyed snow a little bit, but if it snowed like 30 inches or 36 inches, like sometimes it happens in Toronto, I would get really pissed off with it, and I would just get frustrated, just doing all that shoveling on the driveways. The way I'm currently, just I started seeing Bhagavan, like, because there is I chant Rudra, right?
Sorry, we are not able to hear. Kindly, everybody, please put off your mics.
Okay.
I can hear what you said, Sri Devi ji.
So I was saying, like, prior to studying Gita, I used to complain. I did not mind, like, some mild snow, that's fine. But when it was like 36 inches of snow and you have to clean the driveway, I used to complain and get frustrated quite a bit. Uh, but now I see it more of as, like, a Bhagavan's play. I see him playing a game, and in all of those, like, little, um, like, you guys can see my backyard. I just put it in my profile picture. It gets covered completely in snow. So when I look into my backyard, the first thing that comes to mind is, like, that feels like Kailash. So instead of complaining that, like, that is lifeless, oh my God, it's like, it's so barren, seeing something more positive in what's happening, that you have less control on. And what you have control on, you have to do something about it. Bhagavan doesn't say, oh, just endure it patiently, and then whatever comes to you, just tolerate it. Those are the wrong terms, right? Like, there isn't exact term. That's why I just bring it up whenever I hear titiksha and it's being translated. I will say, just like tapas, there is no equivalent translation for it. It's a very beautiful, positive word. Seeing Bhagavan in everything and seeing Bhagavan's play in everything, that just makes you love whatever is going on, no matter what. It could be, like, very hot or very cold, or a situation that you may like or might not like, something you wanted to, accomplish that may not have happened. Everything becomes Bhagavan's play, and you are involved in that play. So it's literally like, a father-child play that's going on. And that feeling is very beautiful.
Excuse me. Enjoying things as they come.
Yes, but not being elated about it.
Yeah. Just happy at the things, whatever is going on.
Correct.
Yeah.
And enjoying everything, including the sorrows.
Yeah.
Anonymity.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Okay.
And Bhagavan says, don't be too elated. Like, if you do a happy dance when you're like, if you have accomplished something, then you would also have the other extreme, because you're like a pendulum. You can have this extreme or that extreme. He says somewhere stay in the middle. Don't be too extremes. Okay, shall we move into the next topic? Who would like to read this one?
I can read.
Go ahead, Anitaji.
Physical pain or sorrow. If death is said to be incapable of causing you sorrow, where does that leave all of the other situations that seem to make you unhappy? The world can cause you some physical pain because the physical body belongs to the physical world. One physical entity can therefore hurt another. Arjuna's problem is not physical, it is purely sorrow, soka, and soka is a type of thinking. While physical pain is something to be endured and cured, sorrow is something you build on. Physical pain is not something that is totally avoidable. The body is subject to pain and will be affected by one force or the other. The sun, rain, winter, and so on. You can protect the body to the extent possible, but because it is anitya, constantly changing, it is subject to pain. This is the nature of the body. Sorrow, on the other hand, is something you build onto the pain because of a particular way of thinking. This is exactly where we have to change cognitively. Therefore, Krishna said, take every situation as it comes, Arjuna, cheerfully in your stride with a sense of humor. Krishna later told Arjuna how these opposites cannot really do anything to you because by nature they have no independent existence apart from yourself. The Atma, there is some kind of lumping that occurs due to a conclusion between orders of reality confusion between orders of reality. The mind, senses, and body have similar realities, whereas the Atma is of another order of reality. When you say you're sad, you involve the Atma, I, in the sadness, as though the Atma belongs to the same order of reality as the mind, which it does not. In this way, the Atma is taken to be the Anatma and it becomes one among the many. Because the Anatma in the world are too many and so varied, you cannot cope with them all, even, e- even though they're all Anatma. Even the small bugs create so many problems, let alone the more powerful forces. If the Atma is really one among the many, nothing can be done. However, the vision is that the Atma is unlike any of them. Sorrow is not possible without Atma. Every time there is sorrow, it is because Atma is somehow involved. Mere mind with its thought process cannot create sorrow. Therefore, ignorance is the cause of imputing sorrow to Atma. What is there to worry about? The coming and going of the opposites is a fact. That's when Krishna told Arjuna, endure them, titikshesva. He was not offering advice, he was being objective. What is the need for this objectivity? Because situations are constantly changing, the pleasant as well as the unpleasant, to think that only the pleasant ones changes and not the unpleasant is not correct. What then is there to worry about? For a person who is objective, who has a certain appreciation for what the world and its situations are all about, there is no reason for sorrow. There are just situations to face and act upon, whether inner or outer. There is nothing to be sad about. Further, he said,
Awesome. Shall we move to the next sloka? Is everybody clear on what Swamiji is saying?
so the only question I had from that paragraph is, so if you include Atma, I understood it becomes like, part of everything else, your, senses and all that. But then it also said sorrow is not possible without Atma.
As long as you're imputing into, that's what they're saying, right? Ignorance is the cause of imputing sorrow to Atma.
Okay.
Right, so that actually reminds this and this prakriya that Swaminathan Mama was trying to help us understand. When you have a crystal and beside it you put a red flower, it'll take the red color into it. Or if you put a blue crystal right beside it or something blue, then it will show blue color. So you're taking Atma to be blue is incorrect because Atma cannot have any color. Similarly, Atma cannot have sorrow because of the surroundings and how our mind works and how our senses work, and if our body is feeling the pain. And because of ignorance, we combine body, mind, senses, and Atma, everything into one bundle. We would think that the Atma is sorrowful because we are going through a particular sorrow phase. But we have to always understand the best analogy to understand this is the movie screen that we were talking about, right? Whatever scenarios may be going on it, whatever scenes may be going, like there is a fight scene, there is a song, whatever, but the screen is not changing behind it. The screen is stable, which is just a projecting medium or reflecting medium, sorry, the reflecting medium. So whatever scenarios may be happening, knowing that Atmanyeva sthitva is what Swamiji used to say, being stable minded, knowing who you really are and living in that, things will go and come and go. Pain will come and go, winter will come and go. But what's not affected by all of this is the Atma, that is who you really are. Make sense?
Yes. So even with ignorance, if you bring Atma into all these entities, it's still the sorrow, happiness, nothing affects the Atma, right?
No.
In the end, it doesn't matter whether you bring it or not.
Correct. You just, putting it right beside and, that close proximity and affecting it or thinking it is being affected. But it really is not. It's a crystal. Make sense? Okay.
Yes.
We'll move to this next sloka. Who would like to chant this one?
Can I please do it?
Go ahead.
Pranati.
Go ahead, Pranati.
व्यातयन्त्येते पुरुषं पुरुषर्षभा समदुःखसुखं धीरं सोमृतात्वाय कल्पते Purusharashva. Oh, the prominent among men, Arjuna. Ete, these two, Sukha and Dukkha. Sam Dukkha Sukham, the one who is same in pleasure and pain. Dhiram, one who is discriminating. Yam Purusham, the person whom na vyatanti, do not affect. Sa, he, indeed. Amritatvaya, for gaining liberation. Moksha. Kalpe, fit. O Arjuna, the prominent among men, the person whom these, Sukha and Dukkha, do not affect, who is the same in pleasure and pain, and who is discriminative, is fit for gaining liberation. In this verse, Krishna addresses Arjuna as a Purusharashva, whose literal meaning is a bull, Rishpa, among men. Among large herds of cattle, the stud bull always stands out because of its size and the big hump on its back. Just as a bull cannot be mixed among hundreds of cows, so too Arjuna stood out as the most exalted of men. Even those who did not know who Arjuna was would have acknowledged him because of his brilliance, tejas. He was a man of great accomplishment and a highly recognized person in the society, so he was addressed as Purushurashpa, the most prominent among men. A discriminative person remains the same with reference to the opposites. Pleasant and unpleasant situations do not affect the person. Such a person is aware of their coming and going, of their constantly changing nature. In the Bhashya, Sankara makes it clear that this is not just a matter of practicality. A wise person knows himself as Atma, one who cannot be affected by any situation. Such a person is called Dhira, meaning one who is discriminating, one who has knowledge of the Nitya Atma. The word Pandita, used in an earlier verse, is replaced here by the word Dhira, meaning one who is not affected by the opposites, and who therefore gains moksha, amritatva. Amritatva means being subject to mortality, where amritatva is to be free from mortality. Knowing the Atma as the one that is nitya, the wise gain moksha. One who is discriminative, who accepts situations happily, and who does not allow himself or herself to be swayed by either pleasant or unpleasant situations, is one who is fit for self-knowledge or who already has this knowledge. Krishna obviously wanted to make this fact clear at the outset.
Okay, so we'll just take a quick pause here. So Bhagavan has used this term dhira in 2 consecutive slokas. So matra sparshast kaunteya sitoshna sukadukkadaha agama payino nityas tam stitikshasva bharata. So even what did he? Sorry, am I quoting the wrong verse? No, he didn't. So this one, dhira is used, and it's a very important term. So here somebody was talking about the perseverance, and this is where it comes up. Somebody who is steadfast, somebody who is perseverant to live in the order of reality that really matters, or that is the nitya order of reality, and not in the anitya order of reality, because we were talking about the 2 orders of reality, right? So somebody who is steadfast and perseverant to live in that state will not have these 2 extremes, the the pleasantries and the unpleasantries. That will things will happen, come and go, and they would not be affected by these 2 opposites. Okay. And we will go a little deeper into the word amritatvam or moksha as we are going through some more slokas in the future. For now, we'll skip that and move to the next one. Would like to chant the 16th sloka.
I can do it, Sriji.
Go ahead, Sriti.
नासतो विद्यते भावो न भावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि
दृष्टवन्तः
दृष्टोऽन्तः स्वनायोस्त्वदा शभिः sorry
no worries त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः
स्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः asatah for the unreal, mithya. Bhavaha, being, na vidyate is not there. Sataha for the real, api also, abhava, non-being, absence, na vidyate is not there. Ubhayo anayo, of these 2, the sat and the asat. Antaha, the ultimate truth. Tattvadarshibhi, by the knowers of the truth. 2. Indeed, drashtaha is seen. For the unreal, mithya, there is never any being any being. For the real, there is never any non-being. The ultimate truth of both of these is seen by the knowers of the truth. This is a very important verse, even though cryptic. For the asat, a word we shall use as it is. There is no being, bhava. In other words, being is not there for the asat. And for the sat, there is no non-being. In the second line of the verse, Krishna went on to say that this fact is known by those people who know the ultimate truth about Sat and Asat. The first line is the crux of the verse.
Sorry.
No problem, Sriji.
I
Asat.
was smiling because I think I'll just mention it. I was just remembering something. So these kind of slokas that are confusing, right? I know he's saying the sat, which is the mithya, something the one. Sorry, just the translation. I'm going to read it. For the unreal, there is never any being. For the real, there is never any non-being. So this is called, or these kind of verses are called as the Grantha Granthi slokas. So there is a nice a Puranic reference to these. So Vyasacharya sat down to write Mahabharata, and he needed a scribe. So he asks Ganapati, Ganesha, to be his scribe. But Ganesha says, okay, you have to say all the verses in a flow. And if you stop anywhere, if you pause anywhere, then I will stop writing this and I will go. So Vyasacharya says, sure, but on one condition, that whatever I'm saying, you have to understand it, understand the meaning of what I'm saying, and then you have to write. And without understanding, you should not write it. So Ganesha says, okay, fine. So when Vyasacharya really needed some break somewhere, he needed to take a pause, he would just use a cryptic verse like this, that Ganesha would require for a moment to pause and think what did you just say? And in that moment, Vyasacharya would just think about the next 1,000 verses or next so many verses that he would want to to come up with those verses so Ganesha can continue to write. So there is one here. There is another one that is my favorite verse in Gita, 269. It's also what does it even mean? How does it make sense? So it's very funny. So I wanted to just share that nice reference. So whenever I see a cryptic verse like this, it just reminds me of Ganesha just staring at Vyasa and thinking what did you just say? Okay.
So are we going to see more of that meaning of that verse? Because it's a little confusing.
Yes. There's going to be a lot of detail about that verse for sure. I was actually thinking, wrong verse to be stopping, in the middle of this verse. It would have been nice if we just had a nice continuation of the full verse. I did not realize we might not have enough time to finish this verse. We'll finish to the extent we can.
Okay, Sriji. Asat means something that does not exist independently. And Sat is what exists independent of anything else. What is it that exists independently? Cold and heat, for example, do not exist independently because they depend upon a number of factors. There is no absolute cold existing by itself. That something is cold depends upon something else. The temperature cannot reveal itself to you by itself unless you have a perception. Therefore, your perception is essential in order to understand that something is cold and something else is hot. When you say this is a pot, does the word pot reveal an object that exists by itself, or the object indicated by the word pot depend for its existence upon something else? If it depends on something else, clay, because of which the pot is there and unto which it will go back, that clay becomes the cause. Karana, for the pot, the word pot has no real object outside of the word itself. It has no existence apart from clay. That which has a cause, that which depends upon something for its existence, that which does not independently exist is called asat. You want me to continue, Sriji?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Shankara explains Asat further. When we try to prove the existence of things that are dependent upon the causes for their existence, such as cold and heat or any object, we find there is no self-existent thing at all among the objects of the world. Why? Because what is there is only a form, vikara, that keeps changing. Vyabhicharati. It is never the same. Did I say that correct, Sriji?
Yeah, yes, it
Okay.
is.
It is never the same, nor can it be the same. Shankara goes on to prove a point here. Suppose all parts are made of clay, but you have knowledge of only one part, you know it is clay. If you know Satya, the truth, the cause, Karana, of all parts to be non-dual clay, regardless of what form any or all parts assume, you know that they are nothing but this one clay. By knowing that one clay, you know all parts in the sense that they are not separate from the clay. Although this is a
So we'll just finish this footnotes. It's very important. And
sure.
then we'll go into the next piece. Yeah, please.
Okay. This explanation is from the Chandogya Upanishad, where in one particular sentence, it is said that before this creation, there was only one thing, the Sat Vastu, which was non-dual, one without a second, undifferentiated. Nothing else was there. From that Sat Vastu alone, called Brahman, everything has come and is non-separate from it. Nothing exists apart from Sat. This knowledge was revealed in this Upanishad to Svetaketu, who had been sent by his father to Gurukula at the age of 12. He returned at the age of 24, very proud of his accomplishments, having studied the Vedas for 12 years. Svetaketu's father was a great man. He could not stand his son's arrogance. So he asked his son, Did you ask your teacher for that knowledge, gaining which everything is known? The boy replied that he did not think his teacher knew this. Later, he asked his father if there was such a knowledge, and he said, How can you know one thing and thereby know everything else? If there is such a knowledge, please teach me, O Lord. The same topic is discussed in the Mandukya Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, sorry. The only difference being that there the student asked this question to the teacher, whereas in the Chandogya Upanishad, the father asked Shvetaketu, who said he didn't know. Then Shvetaketu asked his father to teach him.
Awesome. So here we are talking about the theory of everything, right? Like you know one thing and then that gives you the knowledge of everything. I wanted just everybody to remember this. So important part is it is said that before this creation there was only one thing, the Sat Vastu. Okay. So there are 4 minutes left. Should we stop here and come back to finish the paragraph next week, or should we just go ahead with the next? There are three. There's a short paragraph here.
Can we just talk about that Satvastu?
Okay.
Is that the supreme energy that we're talking about? Is that what you're saying there?
I would call it just the supreme Taraji and not the energy.
Okay.
Because what we say is it's the consciousness, the chit. And from chit came the energy, matter, and all of that we were talking about, which constitutes the Maya. But the Sat Vastu, Sat is the only the Satyam, right? It's the truth that existed before everything else existed. And all the causal karmas, the causal prapancha, the energy and the matter, everything was just embedded within this Satvastu. And then when there was a sankalpa to create the creation, to manifest into a creation, that's when the whole creation has happened. and we call that the Big Bang in the current the theories. So what we are trying to talk about, what Bhagavan is trying to tell us, is for the Sat, there is never non-being. It is always there. For the Asat, even if you notice it, it is still not there, because without the original Sat, this Asat would not have existed. So what you are seeing here is it's an anitya thing. So it can be here this moment and not be here the next moment, or probably 10 years from now, or maybe a million years from now, something wouldn't exist. But what will continuously exist, and what existed before, and what will continue to exist in the future without any time boundaries or space boundaries, that is the Satvastu.
Thank you. Excellent.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we conclude?
Is that like consciousness then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Satvastu is the consciousness, what we call as the Satchitanandam or Satchidananta Brahman. There are multiple names to it. Yeah. The original consciousness. And no, in Swaminathan Mama's presentation, he called it the OC, right? The original consciousness. That consciousness is reflecting in various different reflecting media, like our body, like the Jivatman, if you want to call that. And we are reflecting consciousness. Almost like, when there is a sun, the sun is shining, and there are water droplets or mirror, like, fragments of mirror on the floor. The sun is reflecting from these water droplets. You actually see, like, there are so many suns. But essentially, it's the same one sun, which is the original consciousness. All these fragments of mirror or the water droplets are just reflecting mediums or reflecting consciousness.
Vijay, I have one question.
Sure.
I know I just want to know that Gita, Bhagavad Gita is more than 5,000 years ago, right?
Yes.
Or right?
At least.
Okay. Because I'm just saying, because Bhagavan has referred to the dweller of Bharata as Bharata, O Bharata, many places. We have many slokas, right?
Yeah.
So that was the name given. Bharat was already there that time. Like I just don't know how is it.
He
Yeah.
came from the dynasty called the Bharata dynasty. And
Oh,
because
okay.
of that dynasty, our country was called Bharata. And there are, like, many other Bharatas in our Puranas and Itihasas. So he is because of the dynasty.
No, the country. Oh, okay. I was referring to the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Bhagavan is saying Bharata, oh Bharata, that means he's saying, oh person staying oh person staying here. Oh, he's referring to the man, the person.
Correct. He's referring to the man who is born in the
In
Bharata dynasty, in the family of Bharata.
Okay, thank you so much.
He's a descendant of the Bharata descendant in the Bharata dynasty.
Thank you so much.
I think similar like Rama is addressed as
Yeah.
Raghuvamsha.
Correct. Okay, shall we conclude here? Chat message. Okay. So we'll conclude with the Shanti
I
Mantra.
want to conclude.
I know.
Shall we conclude? I really don't want to conclude. I want to keep talking about it.
That is called as Mumukshutvam, Padmaji. Mumukshutvam right there. Okay, so we'll probably just take a pause then. We will not conclude. Long pause.
Slightly better. Like, it's leaving me.
Yeah, we'll pause for a week. Okay, we'll do that with the Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Sarvam Sriman Narayana Charanaravindarpanamastu. Thank you so much for your time. We'll catch up next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guruji.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much,
Ji.
Sri.
Thank you, Shri.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you, everyone.
Dhanyavadah, Guruji.
Dhanyavadaha. Shubhratri.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.
Shubhratri. Dhanyawad.
Night, Guruji.
Good night.